exudation on tamarisk trees and on bushes. Even if this doubtful contention were true, the provision of it for Israel is still a miracle, because of its timing, for it did not appear on the ground on the seventh day of each week. Acts 16. 4, 5, 25-27. Furthermore, whereas it bred worms and stank if kept over until the next day, it did not do so when kept over for food on the Sabbath. Acts 16. 20, 24. It might also be said that the description of this manna as in exudation from trees does not seem to agree fully with the Bible description of the manna. The Bible manna was found on the ground and it melted in the hot sun. It could be pounded in a mortar, ground in a mill, boiled, or baked. Acts 16. 19-23. New 11. 8. See manna. Credibility of the testimony. The Christian religion is interwoven with the miracle of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. 1 Cor 15. 16-19. The evidence that it took place was not weak but powerful. There were more than 500 eyewitnesses to testify that it did take place. 1 Cor 15. 3-8. Act 2. 32. The motive of the persons who accepted the miracle of Jesus' resurrection as true must also be considered. Many persons have experienced persecution and death for their beliefs. Religious, political, and otherwise. But the Christians who so suffered received no material or political gain. Rather than get power, wealth, and prominence, they often suffered the loss of all these things. They preached Jesus' resurrection, but did not use any form of violence to promote their beliefs or to defend themselves. And one reading their arguments can see that they were reasonable persons, not fanatics. They lovingly tried to help their fellow men. Characteristics of Bible miracles. Noteworthy characteristics of the biblical miracles are their open and public nature, their simplicity, their purpose and motive. Some were performed in private or before small groups. 1 Cor 17. 19-24. Mr. 1. 29-31. Act 9. 39-41, but often they were public, before thousands or even millions of observers. Acts 14. 21-31. 19. 16-19. Jesus' works were open and public. There was no secrecy attached to them. And he healed all who came to him, not failing on the pretext that some lacked sufficient faith. Mount 8. 16. 9. 35. 12. 15. Simplicity marked both miraculous cures and control over the elements. Mr. 4. 39. 5. 25-29. 10. 46-52. In contrast to magical feats accomplished with special props, staging, lighting, and ritual, biblical miracles generally were performed without outward display, frequently in response to a chance encounter, a request, and that on the public street or in an unprepared place. 1 Cor 13. 3-6. Lu 7. 11-15. Act 28. 3-6. The motive of the individual performing the miracle was not for the selfish prominence of the individual or to make anyone wealthy, but it was primarily to glorify God. Joe 11. 1-4, 15, 40. Miracles were not mysterious acts performed merely to satisfy curiosity and to mystify. They always helped others, sometimes directly in a physical way and always in a spiritual way, turning persons to true worship. Just as the bearing witness to Jesus is what inspires prophesying is the spirit of the prophecy, FTNS, so, too, many of the miracles pointed to Jesus as God sent one. Re 19. 10. Bible miracles involved not only animate things, but also inanimate ones, such as calming the window. Text Oi acute miritra longo. Miriam 414 present in the 1st century would pass away. They were needed only during the infancy of the Christian congregation. 1 Cor 13. 8-11. In reading the history of the Acts of Apostles, we see that Jehovah's Spirit was working mightily, speedily, forming congregations, getting Christianity firmly established. Act 4. 4. Chaps 13, 14, 16-19 In the few short years between 33 and 70 CE, thousands of believers were gathered in many congregations from Babylon to Rome, and perhaps even farther west. 1 PE 5. 13. Row 1. 1, 7. 15. 24 It is worthy of note that copies of the scriptures then were few. Usually only the well-to-do possessed scrolls or books of any sort. In pagan lands there was no knowledge of the Bible or the God of the Bible, Jehovah. Virtually everything had to be done by word of mouth. There were no Bible commentaries, concordances, and encyclopedias readily at hand. So the miraculous gifts of special knowledge, wisdom, speaking in tongues, and discernment of inspired utterances were vital for the congregation then. 1 Co 12. 4-11, 27-31 But, as the Apostle Paul wrote, when those things were no longer needed, they would pass away. A different situation today. We do not see God performing such miracles by the hands of his Christian servants today, because all needed things are present and available to the literate population of the world, and to help those who cannot read but who will listen, there are mature Christians who have knowledge and wisdom gained by study and experience. It is not necessary for God to perform such miracles at this time to attest to Jesus Christ as God's appointed deliverer, or to provide proof that he is backing up his servants. Even if God were to continue to give his servants the ability to perform miracles, that would not convince everyone, for not even all the eyewitnesses of Jesus' miracles were moved to accept his teachings. Job 12. 9-11 On the other hand, scoffers are warned by the Bible that there will yet be stupendous acts of God performed in the destruction of the present system of things. 2 P 3. 1-10. Recaps 18, 19. In conclusion, it may be said that either those who deny the existence of miracles do not believe there is an invisible God and Creator, or they believe that he has not exercised his power in any superhuman way since creation. But their unbelief does not make the word of God of no effect. Row 3. 3. For the biblical accounts of God's miracles and the good purpose that they accomplished, always in harmony with the truths and principles found in his word, instill confidence in God. They give strong assurance that God cares for mankind and that he can and will protect those who serve him. The miracles provide typical patterns, and the record of them builds faith that God will, in the future, intervene in a miraculous way, healing and blessing faithful humankind. Re 21. 4. Miriam Meri middle dot and possibly, rebellious. 1. Daughter of Amram and his wife Jochebed, both of the tribe of Levi. Sister of Moses and Aaron. New 26. 59. 1 ch 6. 1-3 Though not specifically named in the account, she was undoubtedly the one-termed sister who watched to see what would become of the infant Moses as he lay in an ark placed among the reeds of the river Nile. X2. 3. For after Pharaoh's daughter discovered the babe, felt compassion for it, and recognized that it was one of the children of the Hebrews, Miriam asked if she should summon a Hebrew woman to nurse the child. Being told to do so by Pharaoh's daughter, the maiden went and called the child's mother Jochebed, who was thereafter employed to care for Moses until he grew up. X2. 5-10. Leads Israel's women in song. Years later, after witnessing Jehovah's triumph over Pharaoh's military forces at the Red Sea, and upon hearing the song of Moses and the men of Israel, Miriam the prophetess led the women of Israel in joyful tambourine playing and in dancing. Responding O text to a acute miritra longo, Mishrates 415 Load Miriam to return to the camp after a humiliating 7-day quarantine. New 12. 1-15. The fact that only Miriam was stricken with leprosy may suggest that she was the instigator of wrong conduct on that occasion. See Aaron. Her sin in murmuring against Moses may have been greater than Aaron's, possibly even being a case of jealousy of a woman against another woman, since they began to speak against Moses on account of his Cushite wife, with Aaron siding in with his sister rather than his sister-in-law. Since Miriam was viewed as a prophetess, she may have enjoyed being the most prominent woman in Israel. So Miriam perhaps feared that Moses' wife would eclipse her. Regardless of such possibilities, however, and while it was grossly improper for both Miriam and Aaron to murmur against Moses, it was especially wrong for Miriam to do so because of woman's God-assigned place of subjection to the man. 1 Co 11. 3. 1 T2. 11-14 Miriam's sinful conduct was later used as a warning example, for at the end of the wilderness trek Moses told the people to comply with priestly instructions regarding leprosy and urged them to remember what Jehovah had done to Miriam when they were coming out of Egypt. De 24. 8-9 Miriam died and was buried at Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin, shortly before Aaron's death. New 20. 28 centuries later, through his prophet Micah, Jehovah called to remembrance the privilege Miriam enjoyed in association with her brothers when Israel came out of Egypt, saying, "For I brought you up out of the land of Egypt, and from the house of slaves I redeemed you. And I proceeded to send before you Moses, Aaron and Miriam." Mix 6. 4. 2. A descendant of Judah. 1ch4. 17-18 Murmur possibly, deception. A paternal head of the tribe of Benjamin and son of Shaharaim by his wife Hodesh. 1ch8. 8-10 Mirror. Ancient hand mirrors Isa 23 were sometimes made of polished stone, though they were generally made of metal, such as bronze or copper, and later of tin, silver, and even gold. It was probably not until the 1st century CE that mirrors of glass were introduced. Since the ancient mirrors were generally made of molten metal, they had to be highly polished in order to have good reflecting surfaces. Pounded pumice stone might be used for this purpose, it being applied periodically thereafter with a sponge that usually hung from the mirror itself. Nevertheless, ancient metal mirrors did not have as fine a reflecting surface as do today's glass mirrors. So the Apostle Paul could appropriately write, "At present we see in hazy outline by means of a metal mirror." 1 Cor 13. 12. Figurative use. The scriptures at times refer to mirrors in a figurative, or an illustrative, way. At Job 37. 18 The skies are likened to a metal mirror, the burnished face of which gives off the bright